what I hope my daughter learns from that is not like that you need to work 60 hours a week. And I hopefully she's, I'll provide a better future for her than that so that she doesn't have to do it. But I really hope that she can take away from that just the value of um, what it can mean to take care of your family and not just financially, but just showing up and just being, available and able and willing.
Welcome to the How It Feels to Be a Mother podcast, where we dive into the emotional complexities and varied experiences of motherhood. I'm your host, Sarah Broberg. This judgment-free zone is a place where mothers can express their authentic feelings and experiences as whole human beings. In each episode, we'll explore the catalyst question at the heart of this movement. How does it feel to be a mother? Through engaging discussions with mothers from diverse backgrounds from around the world, we'll explore the complexity of emotions along the continuum of motherhood. Join us as we speak with mothers from all walks of life, from those with infants to those with adult children, uncovering the vast emotional continuum of motherhood. Whether you find motherhood to be a blessing or a challenge or somewhere in between, sometimes all at once, this podcast is here to validate your feelings and to break the stigma, shame, and guilt that can often accompany maternal experiences. Tune in and be a part of a movement that empowers mothers to embrace the emotional depths of what it really feels like to be a mother. Join the conversation.
Welcome to this episode of How It Feels to Be a Mother. I'm your host, Sarah. Today we meet Sumaya, a 37-year-old mother of a 17-year-old who shares her journey of raising her daughter as a younger parent, embracing a growth mindset, and balancing the challenges of single motherhood. She discusses the complexities of love, parenting without a handbook, and the surprises that come along with raising a teenager in the age of rapidly evolving technology. Sumaya shares her insights on navigating judgment from other parents, the influence of her upbringing on her parenting style, and how world schooling and international travel have shaped her approach to raising her child. She discusses the reality of being a young mother, exploring non-traditional education paths, and finding community support as a parent. Join us as we explore the complexity of emotions along the continuum of motherhood. Hi, Sumaya. Thank you so much for being on How It Feels to Be a Mother. Before we get into this catalyst question, as I call it, I always think it's a worthwhile endeavor to provide a little context to your story. So if you would please provide your age, your preferred pronouns, your relationship status, and then the ages of your children and their preferred pronouns.
Great, thank you. I'm Sumaya and I'm 37. I use she, her, or they, them pronouns. I am currently dating, but have primarily been a single mom for my child's life. And I have a 17-year-old daughter who uses she, her pronouns.
Okay, great. All right, so here we go. This first question, it's not going to be a surprise, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Sumaya, how does it feel to be a mother?
It feels like the greatest and hardest lesson on love of my entire life. As if none of us were provided a handbook on how to be a mother or a parent in general. And it is really the greatest experience of learning how to love effectively and be in relationship with someone that you've never met before. All of a sudden, you welcome a new person into your life, into this world, and then you have to figure it out day by day, how to show up and provide and take care of this person.
Does it feel like you thought it would?
Absolutely not. I definitely imagined much more of the, rainbows and glitter and all the fluffy wonderfulness of parenthood. And while there is definitely that, no one prepares you for the challenges along the way. And I think that it's just an amazing journey to experience all of the different emotions and just different experiences of being a parent and everything that comes along with it.
Mm. Yeah. So you kind of already are hinting in that direction, but how has the feeling of being a mother for you changed over time?
Well, in the beginning of my parenthood journey, I was definitely really eager to learn as much as I could about parenting. And I remember when my daughter was really young, I was reading all of the parenting books.
Mhm.
And I was also under the impression that, if I read enough books that I would figure it out. And one day, I don't know when this day was, but there was at some point in my journey, one of the things that I realized is that each parent is a really different person and each child is a really different person. And one of the best things that I have, been able to do for myself and for my family is to come to a place of radical acceptance around it. And that each day is really a fresh new opportunity to learn and explore and grow together as a family, as opposed to reading all the books and taking notes and trying to figure out like the best way to do everything. Um, sometimes we just have to listen to our own heart and intuition and try to make the best decision for our family based on what we feel is best in the moment. And that's not something you can really learn from a book.
Mhm. You kind you sort of alluded to it in your last response about this kind of journey of growth together, and that's one of the themes that comes out of these conversations. Oftentimes, is that parallel journey of growth. So as your children are kind of growing and developing, you also as a mother, as a human, are also kind of growing and developing. How did that? What did that look like for you?
Well, it has been such a journey for both of us. And for me, one of the things that comes up fairly often in my conversations with folks about parenting is that I was a pretty young mom. And I basically learned how to be an adult while also learning how to be a parent. And I was very much in a personal journey inward during that time as well, and really trying to figure out like who I was as a person because I really didn't have much time to figure that out before becoming a parent, which I think is a different experience than many other people these days who are waiting until later in life to have children. They have that time to really, explore who they are and what they want out of life. And that was something that I've had to figure out along the way, while also trying to figure out how to be a parent.
What's your favorite thing about how it feels to be a mother?
It is the proudest that I've ever been about anything, even when I feel at times like an absolute failure. um, when there are problems I don't know how to solve, or when I just have to give up and admit that maybe, I made something for dinner that no one likes, and I just have to give up, and like everyone's eating a box of mac and cheese. you know? you know, Even when I feel like I'm not doing it right, whatever that means. Um, it still is the thing that really brings me the most sense of accomplishment in my life. And I've always said, to myself, and I've said this to others as well, that um, it was the most important job that I've ever had. And everyone that knows me knows that I'm very career oriented. I'm very passionate about my career, and it's something that I really pour my heart and soul into every day. But at the same time, the reason for that is to provide for my daughter and to build a future for our family. So at the core of everything I do is really about being a mother.
What concerns you about how it feels to be a mother?
What concerns me the most is that we are constantly faced with new and different challenges each day. And um, with the uh, age of my daughter, and just her generation, one of the biggest challenges and concerns that, parents have faced with children in this age range is technology and their interface with it. And in certain ways, it is again providing a new challenge that none of the books that I read 20 years ago were really answering
For
for
sure.
me. um, but what is concerning is just that these um, platforms continue to evolve and change and provide new questions and concerns for parents. And it's almost as if, as soon as we have figured out, one approach to how we're dealing with it, now there's a new problem, or the platform has changed and now we have to interact with it in a different way. And so that challenge is constantly evolving. And as soon as you feel as if you found an answer, there's now a new problem you have to solve. And there's definitely other concerns I have for sure as a parent, but the way it has impacted my child's generation overall is, I think, a big concern for parents who have children at that age range.
For sure. I can relate to that, as my child is downstairs gaming right now, as per usual. So it's like, okay, that's just one of many concerns. I'm right there with you on that one. What surprises you about how it feels to be a mother?
What surprises me the most is how I see mothers treating each other in the world in our current day and age. And one of the things that I'm fond of is, talking to moms online. And I work online for my job, and I'm on social media fairly regularly. But I'm constantly seeing conversations between other parents, but it's usually mothers. And it really breaks my heart to see and to feel how much judgment there is towards other parents. One parent who decides to let their teenager have a cell phone, there's just as many moms who think that person is a horrible mother for making that decision, right? But it happens in my life more in different ways where, as I mentioned earlier, I was a young mom, and one of the things that I regularly experience, probably on a weekly basis, is people making comments about my age and about how they think I'm too young to be a mom, even though I'm
Mhm.
almost 38. And um, it happens pretty regularly, sometimes, multiple times a week, where people look at me like they are looking at a monster with five heads. They're just like in complete like disgust at, how old is your daughter? How old are you? You
Wow.
don't look old enough to have a child that age. And it happens all the time. And it's been happening the entire time I've been a parent. And I would never make a comment about someone like looking too old to have a child. So it's like kind of the opposite of that. Like, you look too old to have a 17-year-old. Like, but
With
it's
a
like,
clap back for you.
it sounds just as rude. But people say it to me all the time, and you can tell that it's just flying out of their mouth and they don't even really think about it. They just blurt it out. And it usually makes me uncomfortable, but I'm also kind of used to it at this point. But it often makes like other people in the room uncomfortable. And so, like, this thing blurts out of their mouth, like, we'll be at a restaurant and someone will be taking like our order or something. And, you know, they'll say like, "Oh, is this your sister?" And I'm like, "No, I'm her mom." And they're like, "Oh my God, like you don't look old enough to be her mom." And I'm like, "Yeah." And then just like anyone else that's like there with us are all just sort of like looking around like, "Okay, like I don't know what people want me to say about it." Like, well, here we are. Um, but that's the thing that I often feel the most kind of judged or labeled about, I guess. But I just see it all the time with like other parents, just judging each other and labeling each other. And it really surprises me because, as I mentioned, there's really no handbook. And in my, opinion, there are definitely ways in which we can cause harm as parents, and hopefully we're all doing our best to prevent that. But like we all make mistakes, and we also are just all making the decisions we feel are best for our family. And I really want to live in a world one day where we can all just support each other and validate each other and how hard that is and not judge each other. That would be a much more ideal community to live in, personally, in my opinion.
Like what you're hearing? We'd love your feedback. Please leave a review.
Yeah, and I agree with you because I mean, we're all doing this and we all know how hard it is. We all know the struggles. They might not be exactly the same for all of us, but like it's still damn hard work. So you would think that we would have more compassion for each other. You would think that there would be more support and more empathy for in I guess I mean, and I'm sure that exists. I know that exists. I can tell you definitively that exists through these conversations that I've been having, but it's a shame that it's not the norm. I'm sorry
It's not.
that's been your experience too. That sucks. But you need to have a good clap back. We're gonna be brainstorming offline. Like we're gonna get to your perfect like response when somebody says something like that.
I, and because I was raised in the South, I am a little like sassy, but I'm not, like impolite most of the time either. Like I say please and thank you, and I'm just like, I would never say that to someone, like I'm too like Southern for that. But at the same time, like there are a lot of clapbacks that run through my head, like you're too old to not have manners. Like, I don't know. you know,
Yeah.
I don't know what the perfect clapback is, but I'm also like maybe just like too polite to say whatever it is that's running through my head. It's fine.
Yeah. I can understand that. You mentioned sort of your kind of Southern upbringing, and one of the the sort of conversation topics that comes up a lot in my conversations for how it feels to be a mother is how the ways in which we were raised influence the ways in which we choose to raise our children. And so I'm wondering what that experience has been for you.
Well, I definitely have learned from my upbringing a few core principles that I have passed down, but there have also been plenty of values that I did not want to pass down, depending on, which side of the family they came from and whether or
Right.
not I felt as if those values were ultimately helpful and useful in the world. Um, but one of the core values of my life that I learned from my mother that I hope to carry throughout my life, and I've really tried to instill in my daughter and the rest of my community, is loving and accepting everyone for who they are. And it was something that I was very aware of in my mother from a very early age. And even though we lived in the South and, we had kind of a religious upbringing, um, and in certain ways, she was very openly supportive of, LGBTQ rights. She was always very loving and accepting of me, even as I was this really weird kid with like weird hair and grungy clothes. And, she was just never judgmental towards anyone. And she also really went out of her way to make everyone feel welcome in her home and for her home to be a safe place for everyone. And that really meant a lot to me growing up, because that was not always the case for, many of my friends who maybe didn't feel very safe being in their own home, or maybe I didn't feel safe being in their home, just knowing that that was like a place where everyone could feel welcome really meant the world to me.
Hmm. What other values did you hang on to? You mentioned there were a couple.
One of the one of the values that I learned very on also was my mother was a single mother, and there are so many ways in which I was learning and preparing for being a single mom before I came to be a single mom. And
Wow.
whenever I was 12 years old, I started working in the restaurant where my mother was working and was basically working to help my mother pay the bills. And that really instilled in me in a very young age how important it is to provide a living for our families and to provide a quality of life for our families. And anyone and everyone that knows me knows that I have a very strong work ethic and I'm always, really career focused. Usually have at least one or two, if not more, side hustles. Um, but something that I really want to instill in my daughter is that it's not even just about like how many hours you work every week, and it's not even about your position or your career, but just making the space in your life to prioritize taking care of your family. And that can look different for different families. Sometimes that means, one parent is working full time and one is staying home, one is working full time while the other one is taking care of the children. There's a lot of different ways in which that shows up. Um, but it has become, so important for me as a single mom and watching my mom raise her children as a single mom because there wasn't another parent to take care of the household. I was providing all of our family's needs, both financial and emotional and logistical on my own. And I feel really grateful that while I'm not necessarily grateful for all the hardships of being a single mother, I'm really grateful for the lessons that I learned and, early on with working and then just raising my younger brothers and helping to take care of them and just seeing how important it was for that to happen in real time from an early age. Um, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about um, how, I was a pretty young mom, I was working, something like 50, 60 hours a week at multiple points of my child's life. Just trying to like put myself through college while working a job, while also waiting tables on the side, and that's pretty much been, my entire adult life at this point. And there's so many other parents that I meet and just individuals that are in my age bracket that have not had that experience. So it's pretty rare that I find someone that has the work ethic that I do. But at the same time, it's really just been the way I was raised as well. And what I hope my daughter learns from that is not like that you need to work 60 hours a week. And I hopefully I'll provide a better future for her than that so that she doesn't have to do it. But I really hope that she can take away from that just the value of um, what it can mean to take care of your family and not just financially, but just showing up and just being, available and able and willing to provide for the wants and needs of your family.
That's a great value to instill for sure. And I can relate to a lot of that too. I grew up also with a single parent household for most of my life. And my mom was always working, two, sometimes three jobs. And I've seen those struggles too. So I commend you. And I also have a collection of an assortment of jobs and side hustles too, that I'm now seeing my 17-year-old like start to embrace me. He had three jobs this summer. I was like, oh God, he's definitely my kid. I might need to let him know that's not necessarily the norm, but also like you do you.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So you are also a world traveler. And I think you traveled, to other countries when your child was quite young. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and sort of what that experience was for you as a mother?
Absolutely. Well, a number of years ago, I left my corporate career after experiencing pretty severe burnout, as many people do in that realm, and realized that I had been working 50, 60 hours a week outside of the home and wasn't really spending anywhere near as much time with my daughter as I wanted. But I also was feeling really stuck in just sort of that like 9 to 5 hustle and grind and really didn't know how to find my way out of it. And what, we ended up doing was, kind of selling everything. I left my job and I packed up and we bought a $400 plane ticket to Europe. And we had some family and friends over there that we were able to stay with. And we also um, found a place on, I believe it was Workaway, which is a site that's kind of similar to woofing, where you can kind of do a work trade to stay on someone's property, but it's not just for farming or, land projects. It can be, childcare or really just anything. And so our first trip we took abroad was to Sicily and to France, and we were there for about 2.5 months, and that was our first time traveling abroad. And at that point, we were fully homeschooling. And, thankfully, we were able to stay with friends and family, which made it, pretty affordable to be there. Um, but it was really our first chapter of world schooling together. And I'd been researching, what it meant to be a world schooler for quite a number of years before that. And it really does feel and look differently for each family because there are definitely many ways to go about it. Um, but we ended up coming back, and later on, we went to the Dominican Republic and we lived there for a chapter. And at that time, my daughter was attending more of a like unschooling and world schooling hub. So it wasn't necessarily homeschool, as then there was a pod of kids that, she was going to school with. But she definitely had an environment where self-directed learning, where the children were really encouraged to explore different topics they were passionate about or that they were interested in. And so it had a bit of a homeschool feel to it, but there was more structure in terms of like a schedule. And then they went on field trips and did different activities together. But those are a few of my favorite memories with my child. Of course, I was absolutely fond and thrilled to be in all of those places with my child. And I definitely hope that she'll take those memories with her forever. And I also really miss being able to do that with her. But she was also very excited to come home and go to high school and go to prom and learn how to drive and just be a quote unquote normal teenager, is what she told me.
Yeah, I'm certain that she will retain those memories. And we've my background, we lived in the Middle East and North Africa for many years, and have also been back here stateside for a while now. And my kids they're just, the travels that we've also done internationally as a family have been some of our most fond memories. And I feel like that if you have the privilege, if you have the opportunity to do that, it's just one of the greatest gifts. Not only for yourself, but if you could do that for your family too. So that's
Absolutely.
excellent.
And one
What
of
have
the
you
things
learned?
that I
Oh, go
love,
ahead. Sorry.
go
No.
One of the things that I love to talk to people about is how accessible and affordable world schooling can really be. Because whenever I started world schooling, people assumed that I was really wealthy and had lots of disposable income, which was not the case. But I had been researching it for a really long time and had really learned a lot of the hacks for traveling and, ways of finding cheap flights and free places to stay. And, everywhere that we've stayed internationally has been extremely affordable, but also pretty comfortable. So there's a lot of different ways of approaching it. And I just want to like put that out there that it can be, you know, much more accessible than I think people believe it to be, for sure.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. You're talking a little bit about like creating community, both, here in the States and then also finding community abroad in whatever way that looks like for you all. So I'm curious if you have a community or if there are people in your life with whom you talk about how it feels to be a mother.
Absolutely. I am so grateful for the community that I have both here and abroad. And if I didn't have other people to talk to about being a mother and what that feels like for me on a regular basis, I really don't know what I would do because it can be so isolating at times. And interestingly enough, I chose to start working from home years before the pandemic because I wanted to spend more time with my daughter and I wanted for us to be able to travel together. So I started working online to be able to make all of that happen. But it also meant that now I'm also home by myself with my kid all the time. And one thing that was really amazing for me the last few years was really building a community with other world schoolers and other digital nomads and like moms on the internet who were like world schooling, homeschooling, traveling. And so I definitely have, quite a few folks in that community that I'm still really connected with and, feel really grateful for their friendship. But where we live here in Asheville, we've lived here off and on for almost 15 years. And so we definitely have a really amazing community. And there are so many moms here who are really near and dear to my heart, who I love dearly. And plenty of them I have called up on many occasions. I've definitely called several of my mom friends already this week and have said, can we hang out? And so I'm really grateful for all of my wonderful friends who are also moms and parents, and feel so grateful for all of their support.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about how it feels to be a mother that you would like to share?
One of the things that has become apparent to me in terms of motherhood the last few years is how important it is to have a growth mindset. And that can mean different things for different people. But for me, it means that I'm always open to learning new things, whether that's learning new things about myself, learning things about my child, learning things about their generation. My child is always teaching me about the new slang of all the fun words that they're using on TikTok and, what music is trending. And, I have learned probably everything that is possible to learn about Chapel Rowan in the past month. And I think that having an open mind and heart is really so crucial for us as parents these days because we're constantly learning and growing as parents, but also our children are always learning and growing, and their personality changes, their interests change, what they want to do with their life changes. So much changes over time, and it feels like nothing stays the same. But as long as we can hold space for that it all works out in the end.
That's great. I agree with that too. Yeah. It was funny when I realized that my 15-year-old son and I have a shared love of rap and hip hop, believe it or not. So now that he's driving, like we've got that blasted in the car, a very unlikely couple, but but that's been really fun to explore with him too. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for having this conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed being here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Learn more about how it feels to be a mother by visiting howitfeelstobeamother.com and following us on our socials. Please join the conversation.
The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this podcast, including those of the host and guests, are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of any entity they represent. Appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The content presented is solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. The use of information provided on this podcast or materials linked from the podcast or website is at the user's own risk. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical or mental health condition they may have, and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.